In recent years, the global economic landscape has seen a dramatic shift, with China emerging as one of the world's most formidable economic powers. As the United States grapples with challenges at home and abroad, many are wondering whether it is losing the economic war to China. This economic rivalry has reached new heights, encompassing everything from trade policies and tariffs to technological advancements and military might. The two superpowers are now locked in a fierce battle for global dominance, and the stakes have never been higher. The term economic war may sound extreme, but the reality is that the US and China are engaged in a complex, multifaceted struggle for economic supremacy. As China continues to grow in influence, it poses significant challenges to the US's long-standing position as the world's leading economic power. This article explores the various aspects of this economic battle, looking at trade relations, technological competition, military strategies, and more, to determine whether the US is truly losing this war to China. Trade relations and tariffs. One of the key battlegrounds in the US-China economic war is trade. The two nations have been locked in a series of trade disputes, with both sides imposing tariffs on each other's goods. In 2018, President Donald Trump initiated a trade war with China, citing unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and a large trade imbalance as reasons for his decision to impose tariffs. The trade war resulted in a dramatic increase in tariffs on Chinese goods, and in response, China retaliated with tariffs of its own on US products. The economic consequences of this trade war have been significant, but perhaps more importantly, it has exposed the vulnerabilities in the US economy. Despite the tariffs, the US trade deficit with China continues to grow, and China has found ways to mitigate the effects of the tariffs. The Chinese government has also focused on diversifying its trade partners, which has helped reduce its dependence on the US market. The long-term impact of these trade disputes is still unfolding, but the US appears to be at a disadvantage. China's ability to adapt to tariffs and maintain a strong export sector, combined with its aggressive foreign policy, means that the US might not be able to contain China's economic rise for much longer. Technological competitio. Another area where the US and China are vying for supremacy is technology. For decades, the US has been the undisputed leader in technological innovation, with companies like Apple, Google, and Microsoft leading the way. However, China has made rapid advancements in technology, particularly in the fields of artificial intelligence, 5G, and quantum computing. One of the most high-profile examples of this technological rivalry is Huawei, China's tech giant. The US has been actively trying to limit Huawei's global expansion, citing national security concerns related to the company's close ties to the Chinese government. However, despite these efforts, Huawei has continued to expand its market share, particularly in Europe and emerging markets. China is also investing heavily in research and development, with the government pledging to make China the global leader in artificial intelligence by 2030. The rise of Chinese technology is seen as a direct challenge to the US's dominance in the sector. While the US is still home to many of the world's largest tech companies, China's technological advancements are starting to pose a serious threat. If China continues to lead in areas like 5G infrastructure and artificial intelligence, it could undermine the US's technological supremacy and shift the global economic balance of power. China's growing influence in global trade. China's Beltand Road Initiative, BRI, is another key factor that could tilt the balance of power in favor of China. The BRI is a massive infrastructure project aimed at creating trade networks across Asia, Africa, and Europe. By financing large-scale infrastructure projects like roads, bridges, and railways, China is able to strengthen its economic ties with developing countries, which often struggle to secure financing from Western institutions. Through the BRI, China is not only expanding its trade influence but also increasing its geopolitical power. Many countries that are part of the initiative have become more dependent on China for trade and investment, and in some cases they have become more politically aligned with Beijing. This has given China a significant amount of leverage in global economic affairs. The US, by contrast, has been increasingly isolated on the world stage, particularly under the leadership of President Trump, who adopted an America First approach to foreign policy. The US has pulled out of multilateral trade agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, NETPP, and the Paris Agreement, while China has actively worked to expand its influence through initiatives like the BRI and regional trade deals. As China continues to expand its influence in global trade, the US risks losing its position as the world's dominant economic power. Military power and economic influence. While the economic war between the US and China is primarily focused on trade and technology, military power also plays a significant role. China's growing military might is closely tied to its economic rise, as the country's economic success has allowed it to invest heavily in defense spending. The Chinese government is rapidly modernizing its military, developing advanced weapons systems, and expanding its presence in the South China Sea. The US military has long been the most powerful in the world, but China is increasingly challenging this supremacy. As China's military power grows, it gains more leverage over economic matters, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region, where many of the world's most important trade routes pass through. China's economic and military strength also give it greater bargaining power in global negotiations, potentially diminishing the influence of the US. The future of the US-China economic war. So, is the US losing the economic war to China? While the situation is complex and evolving, it is clear that China is rapidly closing the gap with the US in several key areas. From trade and technology to military power and global influence, China's rise is undeniable. However, the US still maintains significant advantages in areas like innovation, military strength, and financial markets. The future of this economic rivalry will depend on how both countries navigate their differences and adapt to the changing global landscape. The US will need to invest in new technologies, strengthen its alliances, and adapt its economic policies to remain competitive. At the same time, China will need to address internal challenges, such as an aging population and environmental concerns, in order to maintain its trajectory of growth. In conclusion, while it may be premature to say that the US is definitively losing the economic war to China, there is no denying that China's rise presents a significant challenge to US global leadership. The economic rivalry between these two superpowers is likely to continue for the foreseeable future, with both sides jockeying for position in trade, technology, and military power. The outcome of this economic war will shape the global economic order for years to come, and it remains to be seen whether the US can maintain its dominance in the face of China's growing influence.